And the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, he's here with us in the studio today. It's really nice to see you, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
To see you. My pleasure.
Yes. All right. Now, let's begin this way. You have been INEC chair for about 3 years now. So far, how would you rate how it has been? How has it been so far for the past 3 years for you? An overview.
Well, it has been a very exciting journey for the last 3 years. The whole business of INEC is to conduct free, fair, credible elections. That is what we have been doing, and I'm happy to say that for the last 3 years, that is since the 2015 general elections, we have conducted elections into 180 constituencies, the highest number of off-season elections conducted by any commission in the history of the country. When was the last election we conducted? About 4 weeks ago in Ibarapa, in Oyo State. And when is the next election? In a little over 2 weeks in Ekiti State. So it has been the business of conducting elections, but the preparations to the conduct of elections has also taken a large chunk of attention and time. We have, for the first time in the history of the Commission, successfully concluded within a short period of time the planning processes. We have the strategic plan, we have the strategic program of action, we have the election project plan. And these are documents that were initiated and validated in full consultation with our stakeholders, the civil society organizations, people like you in the media, the security agencies, the political parties. So the journey has been so far very rewarding. In terms of planning, perhaps the 2019 elections is the most well-planned, deliberately well-planned election in the history of the country.
It's interesting that you actually say that, because I was about to take you up on that statement. You've been quoted as saying that the 2019 elections will be far, far better than 2015. And I'm wondering, wrapping it around my mind, what exactly are the indications? What have you put in place to actually bring that to reality? Well,
basically the indicators are the planning, planning and implementation. As we are planning the elections, we are also implementing some of our plans in the numerous by-elections I've mentioned. And we haven't finished conducting the by-elections and off-season, end-of-tenure elections, court-order-run elections yet. So in terms of planning and in terms of the experience arising from the conduct of off-season elections, we have benefited tremendously, and that is what gives us the confidence. Secondly, and most importantly for me, is the increasing confidence Nigerians have in the process. From the 2015 general elections to all the elections we have conducted, you can see the elections keep getting better, one election after another, such that today you can confidently say the power of incumbency doesn't guarantee victory at all.
Yeah, but
it's the votes of the people.
That's a good point that you've just made. But in spite of the growing confidence which you say Nigerians have in the electoral process, you have almost 8 million PVCs uncollected. What do you think is responsible for that?
Well, the figures came from the Commission. We have been open and transparent about it. We said we have about 7 million uncollected PVCs. Interestingly, the largest majority of the uncollected PVCs are from Lagos, 1.4 million.
Very ironic.
And so far, out of the about 7 million uncollected PVCs, we have a little over 500,000 collected. And so we still have a number of PVCs uncollected. But let me say what we are doing. We are not distributing the PVCs, the permanent voter cards. We are making the cards available for collection. And there is a difference between distribution and collection. In collection, the onus is on the registered voter to go and pick up his or her PVC. Distribution may mean distribution by proxy, with the risk that the cards may go into the wrong hands. So we have been saying that the cards are available, and they are in various locations nationwide. We have given the statistics, and we hope other Nigerian civil society organizations, the media like you, through a program such as this, will galvanize Nigerians into going to collect their PVCs for the election. We'll make the cards available until the next general election.
All right. So if people don't come to get their PVCs, what becomes of the PVCs? Because sometimes there was a news report that INEC was about to destroy some of the PVCs that were not collected.
No, that report was attributed to an official of the commission and since denied. He was misquoted.
Okay.
So let me seize the opportunity of this program to categorically state that INEC is not destroying the PVCs. They are government property paid for by the taxpayers' money, so will not destroy. These cards will be available until the owners come forward to collect them. We'll continue to reach out. One of the things we did in Lagos, for instance, was to collaborate with the Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission before the last local government elections. Yeah. And we went community after community to see if the owners of the cards can come forward to collect them. We made some progress, but there isn't much progress that we have made. But the cards will be available. They won't be destroyed. And at any time before the terminal date that we fixed for the collection of the PVCs, citizens are free to come forward and collect them.
Yeah, but sorry, before we leave this issue now, because we have to delve into other areas, from INEC's finding, what is really responsible for people not coming to collect their PVCs?
Well, from our preliminary investigation, a number of factors. One, a large number of those who are registered in 2011 and 2015 were students of tertiary institutions, and they have since graduated and moved on. That's one. Secondly, quite a large number of others may have been public servants on routine posting or deployment to states, and they have since been posted outside the places where they domicile. And then there may well be a number of Nigerians who have unfortunately lost their lives. So in trying to clean up the voter register, we have engaged with all segments of the Nigerian society. For instance, we have made it possible for citizens to apply for transfer of their registration. It's a simple process.
How simple is that?
Yeah, if, for instance, somebody registered in Lagos, and the card was produced and it's lying somewhere in Lagos, but the person lives in another state, you don't initiate the transfer from Lagos. You initiate the transfer to where you wish to vote. Remember, the Electoral Act says that you vote where you are registered. But the process of transfer is actually a simplified process. Once you apply through the electoral officer of the local government that you wish to vote in, the remaining process will be concluded by the commission itself up to the time we print a new voter card for the new registrant or the person who wishes to transfer from one location to another. But also ensure that we clean up the voter register further. We have collaborated with the National Population Commission. The National Population Commission is the agency responsible for the recording of birth and death in the country, so that they can also avail us of information on the number of Nigerians who are unfortunately deceased, so that we can null their names from the voter register. And we're working very closely with the NPOPC, and we're happy with the collaboration from that agency.
All right, it's good to know that. As at May of this year, some social groups, including civil society organizations, have been calling on government to ensure they fund INEC adequately. Otherwise, it will jeopardize the 2019 election. What is the situation with the funding of INEC now as we speak?
Well, as far as the commission is concerned, we have made a submission to the approving authority, and the approving authority is going to take the necessary measures to ensure that funds are available to the commission. We have been assured and reassured. As far as our planning is concerned, including planning where we require resources, we believe we are on course. We'll begin to press the panic button when it is 6 months to the election. It's not yet 6 months to the election.
Okay, so no cause for...
No cause.
For alarm now.
From now to the general election is exactly 231 days to the opening of polling units at 8 in the morning, Lagos time, on February 16th, 2019. And there is something interesting I need to say about the planning process. For the very first time in the history of our elections, we now know when our elections will hold. The commission first established the principle, just like Ghana has done 5th of December.
Yes.
In the United States is the first Tuesday of the month of November of the election year, unless it happens to be the first day of the month. In places like Liberia and Kenya, the dates of election are fixed in the Constitution. There was uncertainty surrounding when elections hold in Nigeria, and the Commission decided that we should make it certain so that organizations such as you as the media can plan, civil society organizations, the political parties, international observers, local observers, the Commission itself, the security agencies, everybody can plan for the election. So we had a meeting and decided that going forward our elections will hold on the 3rd Saturday of the month of February of the election year. That is for national elections, meaning presidential and National Assembly, Senate and House of Reps elections.
Yes.
To be followed 2 weeks later by the governorship and state assembly elections. And the federal capital territory elections, where the elections coincide with the general election. The FCT is the only part of the country where INEC conducts local government elections. So on the basis of that principle, the Commission decided that the next general election will hold in 2 phases. The first one on Saturday, the 16th of February 2019, to be followed by governorship, state assembly, and area council elections in the FCT on the 2nd of March. But we went further to release the timetable and schedule of activities for the election on the 9th of January this year, over a year to the election. So the dates for the conduct of our elections are no longer secret. It engenders certainty, and it enables people to plan for the general elections.
All right. It's quite interesting to see this certain timetable that is fixed and firm for close to 10, 15 years ahead. It's fine. But one other thing that Nigerians are concerned about is the issue of diaspora voting and those who are involved in essential duty, like those who are the media, the police, and medical doctors who will be very busy on election days. What's the plan to have them involved? We know that in South Africa, election is not conducted on just one day. In India, in fact, it takes about a week, if not more, to conduct elections.
Well, this is a very good question, but I must say it's also loaded. You have basically raised 3 issues. Let us start with the category of Nigerians who unfortunately don't vote because of the peculiar work that they do. For instance, the security agencies, they're involved in securing the environment for us to conduct elections. So they may not be available to vote on election day, they have not voted. The election duty staff, from regular officials of INEC to the ad hoc staff that we engage. And then you have people like you in the media, because your work also takes you to places outside where you are registered. Remember, I said earlier that our law says that you vote where you are registered. You can't vote where you are not registered, but you can transfer your registration. So it becomes difficult, not only for those who are on essential service, but for the categories of people I mentioned earlier, from security agencies to election duty staff, actually to vote. Because the exigencies of work may take them to places outside where they have registered to vote. We have no system of early voting in Nigeria. This is one issue that the Commission is considering, but certainly not in 2019. We'll consider this for future elections. But I appreciate the fact that there are some categories of Nigerians who, because of the job that they do for this country and the service that they render, that they can't vote on election day. It's unfortunate, but that is the situation until we find a solution to it. There are 2 other issues raised. You talked about diaspora voting. Diaspora voting has 2 dimensions. You have what we call the out-of-country voting, the OCV. This is for service personnel, Nigerians who are serving the country outside the borders of the country. For instance, those who are on foreign diplomatic service. And there are others who may be on foreign military service, or citizens who have legitimate reasons to be serving the country outside the country at the time of elections. Now, these are persons who are registered in Nigeria. Elsewhere, they vote. You have heard, of course, about the postal ballot in some other jurisdictions. So that is one category of Nigerians. The other category, which is more related to diaspora voting, are Nigerians living permanently outside the country. That's Nigerians resident outside Nigeria. in which case we need to make some provision for them to vote. But remember, election is a legal process. It's a process that is governed by law, and then we develop our regulations and guidelines on the basis of the law. The law at present does not permit for registration of voters outside the country. Remember, I said earlier that you vote where you are registered.
Yes.
And if people are not registered within Nigeria, they can't vote because we can't register them abroad. So we need to amend the legal provision, and it's a constitutional provision.
Is INEC looking at helping the National Assembly? Are you looking at sponsoring that particular bill to ensure that, you know, for the National Assembly to begin to look at that?
No, INEC has already submitted
okay.
a bouquet of areas where we need amendments of the legal provision, both constitutional and the Electoral Act. And it's one of the areas where we made submissions to the National Assembly. But INEC is ready. I want to assure Nigerians in the diaspora that we are on the same page. So if anybody from outside the country advocates for the rights of citizens to vote, I will say that to this INEC, the person is preaching to the converted.
Okay.
And we have taken a proactive step, because once the law is amended, we have to come up with regulations and guidelines. How do they register? How do they vote? How do we take or count overseas vote for the purpose of meeting the threshold for making declaration in a presidential election, for instance? The law says that for a person to be declared president, he or she must secure a majority of votes and spread. That is 1/4 of the votes in 2/3 of the states of the country.
Exactly.
So if Nigerian citizens vote abroad, how are we going to categorize the overseas votes?
In other words, it will be a tall order.
No, in other words, we are going to look at it and look at our regulations and guidelines to make
the
that
legal
happen.
framework.
We already have some sort of draft guidelines in case the legal environment is amended to enable us to proceed with diaspora voting.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. There's so many other issues we need to raise. No card reader, no 2019 elections. You were quoted as saying that. You want to expatiate on that for us?
Is there no card reader, no 2019 elections,
yes,
or no card reader, no voting?
No card reader, no 2019 election.
No card reader, no voting.
Okay, is that what you meant?
Let me just clarify this.
Okay.
For the first time, Nigeria has achieved the complete biometric voter register. We have a voter register that has all the 10 fingerprints of citizens with their photographs, telephone numbers, addresses, and what have you. And very interestingly too, for the first time, the voter register is online. Citizens can browse and check the status of their registration. If you are a registered voter in Nigeria, you know by simply checking online. Now, what does the card reader do? Basically 3 functions. The card reader plays a confirmatory role. First, it confirms that the card was issued by INEC and not cloned. Secondly, it confirms that the person who presents the card reader to the presiding officer at the polling unit is the actual owner of the card, because the machine will not read the card. If the machine is unable to read the card or to confirm that it's issued by INEC, such a person cannot vote in our elections. And then thirdly, the machine, the smart card reader, also authenticates the fingerprint. People may look alike, they may have proximate dates of birth, but the one thing that differentiates you from me, from any other person, and is from our maker, is our biometrics. So the machine now authenticates.
Yes.
Once that is done, then the voter who presents himself at the polling unit on election day gets the ballot paper, and then the person votes or thumbprints and drops in the box. Now, I know that there are issues relating to the functionality of the card reader.
Based on past experiences?
Based on past experiences, but you can see the tremendous progress that we have made in addressing the problem of functionality of the card reader. In elections after elections in the recent past, you hear less and less of complaints about the performance of the card readers in the field, because we have learned from experience.
So what is INEC doing differently that is bringing this improvement now?
Okay, we have improved on the hardware of the card reader. The window on which citizens affix their thumbs or index fingers or any of the fingers for the purpose of authentication has been increased. We have also increased the processing capacity of the smart card readers through the SAM cards, this SD cards. We have latched the lock on the smart card reader so that the battery won't shift, so that it may go blank on election day, because it happened in previous elections. We have also improved on the software. Okay. So the speed and accuracy with which the smart card reader responds is very encouraging. So
you're saying, in other words, that this card reader is actually going to be fail-proof as far as 2019 is concerned?
Well, I think it will be an exaggeration for me to say it will be fail-proof.
Okay.
It's a piece of technology.
In the event that it fails, what then?
What does failure mean? Maybe two things. In the event that the machine malfunctions on election day, we have technical support that will immediately move and replace the smart card readers, and the election will continue. But in the event it fails completely, terrain has little influence on the smart card readers. But in the event that it fails completely, we have always said consistently since 2015, if it fails completely, then INEC will appoint another date, like the following day, to conduct the election in that particular polling unit, where the total number of registered voters in that polling unit will affect the margin of lead in the election and consequently affect the outcome of the election. So we'll deploy the smart card readers. We have learned from the experience of what happened in the past, and we'll continue to improve on the functionality of the card readers.
All right. You said, before we go on a break and then come back, you said there won't be incident forms during this election. And incident form somehow takes care of some of these issues. So what concerns do you have regarding incident forms?
No, let me make a clarification.
Okay.
We said before the 2015 general elections that in case the card reader is unable to read the fingerprint, the biometrics, then we'll give the incident form to the voter to enable the voter to vote. The failure of the machine to read the biometrics will not disenfranchise any Nigerian. But we did so through the instrumentality of the incidence form. There was a form available at the polling units. But what we have done now is to redesign the voter register, and we're test running it in Ekiti in the next 2 weeks. That we have simply provided a column on the register that if the machine is unable to read the fingerprint, then we just tick the column for incidence, which will make the voter turnaround time even better, and voters will have more, a better voting experience on election day. So it's not that we are going to do away completely with incidence, but there won't be a form for people to complete. But the presiding officer will just tick a box on the voter register that this person was successfully accredited using the incidence.
All right. We'll go on that break now. When we come back, of course, like you know, we've been speaking with the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, on the preparations for the 2019 elections. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is TVC Breakfast, and our special guest on the show this morning is none other than the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, has been trying to give Nigerians some confidence as far as the 2019 elections are concerned. Let's even start from where we should have started from. The number of political parties. You were quoted as saying that the likelihood is there that you might have up to 100 political parties gunning for these elections. Presently, you have about, how many do you have now?
68.
68?
68. registered?
We have 68 political parties in Nigeria, but let me give you a little bit of history of it. For a very long time, civil society organizations, politicians, citizens have been demanding for the opening of the political space. Instead of, at a point, 2 government-decreed political parties or 5 decreed political parties, the political space should be opened up so that you have more political parties competing in our elections and given the citizens, therefore, greater choice. So the law was amended to provide for truly multi-party democracy. The threshold for registration of political parties has been simplified. You need to apply to INEC. There is a certain number of members of the National Executive Committee of the party that should come from a certain percentage of the states of the federation. You should have an office in the FCT. We should go and verify and confirm that the office exists in the FCT. And then the Electoral Act further says that if an association applies for registration as a political party and doesn't hear from INEC within a month, it is deemed to have been registered. And there were political parties that were actually registered by court order. The law says that we should register associations that apply for registration as political parties. But any association registered 6 months to the general election cannot participate in the next general election. So we'll keep registering on the basis of the provisions of the law until that threshold has been met. At present, we have 68 political parties, but as at last week, we had 138 applications from associations for registration as political parties.
All right. If we assume all of those are registered before the time, how will the ballot paper handle all of those political parties?
Well, it's a challenge that the Commission must face. We are doing what the law says we should do. If INEC doesn't, then obviously we will be ordered by the court to register the political associations as parties. How do we manage the ballot? In Anambra State, where we had a governorship election in November last year, we had the largest number of parties contesting in any governorship election in the country, 37 political parties. And we had little difficulty managing the ballots. You know, at present we have what we call the snake ballot paper. It's just 2-column long, but it cannot be convenient for the purpose of 37 political parties. So in Anambra, we introduced the 2-column ballot paper. In fact, for the national elections in 2019, we are assuming that there will be perhaps 80 political parties contesting. And so we have been having a drill on the size of the ballot papers. For now, we are comfortable with a 3-column ballot paper. We'll engage with Nigerian citizens big time, do voter education, voter sensitization with the support of political parties, civil society organizations, and the media. We'll have posters containing specimen ballot papers that citizens can look at to familiarize themselves with the ballot papers ahead of the elections. But you have another challenge.
Which is?
If you have a big ballot paper, you also need a big ballot box.
There you go.
Of course.
Because the ballot papers have to go into a ballot box.
Exactly.
At present,
how do you plan to fix that?
we use the 45-liter ballot boxes. And we have been doing drills in the office to see how many ballot papers on the basis of 80 political parties can fit into the existing ballot boxes.
Are the challenges
and for the
being
three
revealed?
columns, we are comfortable with the existing ballot paper that we have. So we know that there is going to be a challenge, but we have taken steps to make sure that we overcome the challenges.
Okay, let's go into the Ekiti election. Now let's talk about that briefly, because there's no way that's the next election coming up in just about 2 weeks from now.
As a matter of fact, it's been said that that will be the litmus test for
INEC. In all of the planning you talked about earlier on, in all of the innovation and trying to test the abilities of INEC. How ready is INEC for the Ekiti election?
We are ready for the Ekiti election. Remember, Ekiti has only 16 local government areas. Unlike the 30 local government areas in a place like Oshun. or the 21 local government areas in Anambra where we conducted governorship elections, or even other places where we conducted governorship elections. The voter population is less than 1 million. We don't have difficult terrains in Ekiti, similar to what we have in, say, Bayelsa or even Ondo, or the riverine part of Ondo State. We have been planning for the Ondo elections. We have recruited the staff that we need for the election. We are training them from the supervisors, monitors to the ad hoc staff. We have delivered all the non-sensitive material for the Ekiti election to Ekiti already. It's only the sensitive material that needs to be delivered. We have been monitoring our planning processes for the elections. As at Wednesday this week, we have achieved 65% of our target for the delivery of all that we need to deliver for the Ekiti elections. The other activities outstanding cannot be accomplished now. There are tasks that can only be accomplished as we move closer to the election.
Okay.
We have our resident electoral commissioner has been up and doing. We'll deploy some national commissioners and some resident electoral commissioners to support him for the elections. I will also be in Ekiti for the stakeholder meetings closer to the elections in the week leading to the election. We are happy with the arrangements we have made for the election. As for litmus test, I've been hearing this, and you should please tell me, when am I going to pass this litmus test?
You think you've passed it already?
You know, every election
is a litmus test.
They say this governorship election, that senatorial election is a litmus test. And we have been passing and passing,
tells you
but we have not
Nigerians are
passed the litmus
expecting
test.
so much. Nigerians are expecting so much.
Can you really blame Nigerians, considering the fact that, you know, where we're coming from, almost every election has come with some level of apprehension, especially the presidential election. Now, the logistics that you have just, you know, lined up for us, don't you think those are things that e-voting, for example, would have taken care of? But of course, you're on record to have stated that e-voting is not the way to go, at least not in 2019.
No, I didn't say it wasn't the way to go. I was commenting on the feasibility of e-voting in 2019. But I need to make this clarification. What is e-voting? Many people believe that by deploying an EVM, an electronic voting machine, you have achieved e-voting. There are processes. You start with a credible electronic voter register. And I'm happy to say that INEC has achieved that. We have a reliable electronic voter register. Next, you do electronic accreditation of voters. And I'm happy also that INEC has achieved that since the 2015 general elections with the machine-readable, chip-based permanent voter cards having a handshake with the smart card readers. So we're able to accredit using machines. So we're doing electronic accreditation. Next, we should be able to do electronic collation of results and also do electronic transmission of results from the polling units to the collation centers and ultimately to the declaration centers. Right now, INEC is piloting electronic collation and transmission of results, and will continue to pilot in Ekiti and Oshun, and once we are satisfied, we'll deploy in the 2019 general elections. Now, once we are satisfied with these 4 processes, we'll then coalesce them into a box called an electronic voting machine. That is when you can say you have achieved electronic voting. But if you just have a voting machine that stops at voting, then it's no more than a balloting machine, not electronic voting machine. Because you need a machine that can also, that has the voter register, that can accredit, that can collate and transmit, so that you, as much as possible,
the whole process from A
all
to
the
Z
processes
is electronic.
So between the time we have now and the general election, which is 231 days, we cannot fabricate those machines, design, develop those machines, and deploy to 120,000 polling units, and to train the staff that will handle the machines, and also address the twin challenges of communication and security of communication, because we have to rely on the telecom service providers. We're already in touch with them. We have been discussing that possibility with them. And then with the Nigerian communication satellite, NIGECOMSAT, as also another possibility. So we are working. We feel we have challenged ourselves sufficiently, and we're also challenging every national institution to make sure that we succeed in delivering credible, free and fair elections in 2019.
In Ekiti, the two main political parties there, the PDP and the APC, are already accusing each other of plans to use INEC to rig the election. In fact, the PDP accused the APC of holding secret meetings with INEC, as at earlier today. Talk to us about all of these. Yeah. Where are these coming from?
Election is a legal process and will continue to stick to the provisions of the law, our regulations and guidelines. I'm sure you are aware that whenever elections are around the corner, you hear accusations and counter-accusations. I want to assure Nigerians, particularly citizens resident in Ekiti State, that we will not compromise. Elections will be free and fair. Their votes will count, and only their votes will determine who wins. But as for the accusations, these are things that we are so used to. Tell me one governorship election where the Electoral Commission was not accused of doing one thing or another.
But aren't you concerned that such fears could affect the integrity of the whole process? Yeah,
but the integrity of the whole process starts from our own integrity. I will never compromise my integrity for any reason.
Okay, that's good to know. You did say recently that without youth participation in the electoral process, the elections would be totally unrealistic, including the 2019 election. What exactly do you mean by youth participation? Are you talking about the deployment of youth, the National Youth Service Corps members, when it comes to ad hoc staff that INEC needs from time to time to do the elections? Or are you talking about the youth actually participating in terms of going for elective positions? To what extent are do you mean?
It's a mixture of both.
Okay.
First, if you take election duty staff from the youth corps members, and where we need to make up for shortfall, we go to campuses of federal tertiary institutions to engage students. Without them, I can't see how election can successfully hold in Nigeria. They are among the most educated. For the youth corps members, they are all graduates or HND holders. They are the most patriotic, most readily available. They are in all parts of the country, and the most enthusiastic election duty staff available.
How enthusiastic are they now with the prevailing security situation, especially in the northeast and, of course, the north central part of the country?
No, we can come back to the security situation as totally at a different challenge, but very important challenge. So the youth are actually the bedrock for conducting elections in this country. But secondly, from the figures that we have been seeing so far, based on the continuous voter registration exercise that we embarked upon since April 27, 2017, the majority of those who have registered to vote in the 2019 elections are the youth. Remember, for those who were born in 1999, at the inception of this democratic journey, they're already of voting age by now. So, and then I think they have been fired up by the signing of the Not Too Young to Run bill. So that's why I said, based on the figures that I have been seeing, that 2019 is likely to be the year of the youth in our democratic journey. As for security challenges, yes, it is now much more complex than the simple challenge of insurgency in a particular section of the country that we confronted in 2015. But I'm happy to say that at least in a large chunk of the northeast, the IDP camps have been emptied. We have been doing registration in all these states, and the internally displaced persons are increasingly going back to their original places of domicile. I am also happy to say that in 2016 we conducted a by-election in Yobe State in 3 local government areas, including Bara, which was one of the local government areas liberated from Boko Haram. And we didn't have a single incidence of security in conducting the election. In fact, when we conducted the election to fill a federal constituency, a vacancy in a federal constituency, we were then asked that we were told that we are going back to the same local government to conduct another election again. Reason, the person who won the by-election to fill the vacancy in a federal constituency was a serving member of the State Assembly.
Okay.
So it now created a vacancy in the State Assembly, and we conducted 2 elections, and there hasn't been any incident so far. As for the incidents of violence in a few states of the country, we have tasked our resident electoral commissioners to find out, are there areas where we have Nigerians displayed in camps? What are the details? How can we then respond? First, by conducting a continuous voter registration to enable those who have lost their cards or who have not registered afresh to register. And I'm so happy with the response in one of the IDP camps in Benue State, were truly, truly remarkable, that people, in spite of their circumstances, were interested in actually obtaining the PVCs to vote, which gives us confidence that they are also confident in the processes of using the card.
So parents too should be confident to allow INEC deploy their wards to those crisis-ridden areas. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Now, that's what we are saying. And in any case, we have been working with the security agencies. We have been working with the NYSC, not only to provide security to those who are involved in election duty, but we have also, arising from experience, been providing security for the NYSC quotas in some of the states. Yeah. In previous elections, when they emptied the quotas to help the nation to conduct elections, some hoodlums then seized the opportunity to cause some discomfort. But now we have been providing security. We'll continue to do so.
All right. As we wind down gradually, I'd just like you to make clarifications on the issue of the sequence of the election. This caused a lot of
brouhaha.
Exactly, across the country. Has that been laid to rest now, the sequence for the general election in 2019? As to whether presidential election will come first or the National Assembly will come first or the last, as the case may be?
Well, 2 things. One, I should be careful not to talk too much about the sequence of elections because it's sub judice. Okay. The case is before the courts. But as far as INEC is concerned, we have issued the timetable and schedule of activities on the basis of the law as it exists. And there is no other law. Any other thing is just a proposal, it's inchoate. So we are operating on the basis of the existing law. If there is any new amendments to the existing law that warrant some reconsideration, we'll cross the proverbial bridge when we get there.
Yes, indeed.
Professor Mahmoud Yakub, Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, thank you so much for coming on TVC Breakfast.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.